I've been a diabetic for a decade, but see, one of the recurring reactions I run into is, are you sure you can eat that donut? It could be cake or chocolate, whatever. Always. But then at diabetes summer camp, we have full-blown ice cream and pizza parties? What? Diabetes. People know of it and a few facts about it, but combine that with a plethora of jokes and memes and suddenly any correct information is distorted into falsehood. As a diabetic then, I'm here to say that yes, I can eat a donut, thank you very much. Diabetics cannot eat sugar, otherwise they die. That's what all those expressions of shock imply. Once upon a time, yes. Yet diabetes has come a long way in the last century. So let's examine the diabetic of the past. Perhaps then we can see why this misconception exists, why it's incorrect, and why diabetic can indeed eat donuts. So imagine, you're a healthy, active youth in 1919. It's been around a few years, you know. World War I just ended, the Spanish flu is more rampant than Corona today, but your family's okay. Until one day. One day, you get up, pee, eat breakfast, and everything seems fine. But then you pee again, and again, and again. Drink more water to keep yourself hydrated, Mama says. So you drink. Again, and again, and again. I'm sure everyone can see the vicious cycle at play here. And so, by the time you trudge your leaden feet to bed that night after a hearty chicken broth to try and compensate for that sieve of a bladder you seem to have, you feel nauseous. Eyes droop. Hands quake. You lie down for about a second before you spill your day out onto the floor. A blackout and a trip to the hospital later, your doctor delivers your death sentence. The year is 1919 and you have been diagnosed with diabetes mellitus type 1. But what the hell is diabetes anyway? Well, you know how everyone needs energy to function? Well, the human body gets its energy by breaking down the carbohydrates from meals we eat into glucose or sugar and using that to form ATP, usable energy. But for sugar to be used, it must travel through the bloodstream and into cells opened by a hormone called insulin. Insulin is produced in the pancreas. Unfortunately, in diabetics, the body goes rogue. It destroys the pancreas's insulin-producing cells, and so no more insulin, no entrance for sugar. What does that mean? It means a deficiency of sugar in the cell where it's needed, and a sugar blockage in the bloodstream. And then what? Well, sugar blockages like plaque are extremely detrimental. You urinate immensely to get rid of as much sugar as you can, but that only helps so much. Worse still, the body cannibalizes itself. It uses everything and anything it can consume to make up for the lack of usable sugar, even if these routes are toxic. And so you survive, temporarily, but eventually your kidneys will give. You will slip in and out of comas and your brain will slowly shut down. Your body will be consumed and finally you will be no more. Well, it's simple then, Abdullah. Just avoid sugar. Duh, what were we saying before? See, it isn't that simple. When we talk about glucose, we talk about carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are found in wheat, in dairy, and in fruits. So, if over half the food groups have sugar, what can diabetic you do? Well, you eliminate all carbohydrates, pee out as much sugar as you can, and then survive on the most minimalistic diet ever. You now eat your greens, you down your proteins. You confine yourself to your hospital bed and be, for all intents and purposes, a vegetable, because you have next to no sugar in your cells regardless. Diabetics cannot eat sugar, otherwise they die. Up till now, the statement does hold true. But see, even with the so-called diet, a diabetic in 1919 will die regardless, if not in days, then weeks, months, a few years maximum. But see, that was the past. Until 1921, diabetes was a death sentence. But that's when things changed, drastically. See, if we go back to diabetic you stuck in the hospital, one day you fall into a coma. Again. But suddenly you feel a prick on your skin before the haze clears and you come to. to a ward of waking children and overjoyous parents. Why? Well, because in January 1921, Dr. Frederick Banting, a Canadian, managed to isolate insulin from animals, purify it, and allow millions to live a full life. A full life, but it isn't a completely free life. See, for the rest of the 20th century, diabetics, while they could live full lives, had to stick to regimented workouts, strict meal plans, and painful glucose blood and urine tests. They were in essence health freaks, or so a diabetic doctor I once ran into told me. I kid you not, this man and probably all the diabetics of his generation are like low-key Olympians or something. And so, even in the 20th century, it would hold true. Diabetics still cannot eat donuts. But see, that was the 20th century. This is the 21st century. In the 21st century, technology has advanced to the point where glucose readings can be continuously monitored 24/7. In the 21st century, insulin can be delivered with the press of a few buttons on this device here. It's a pump, not a pager. In the 21st century, just a few weeks ago actually, I received an email highlighting the information that an algorithm for an artificial pancreas was in the works. Yes, it isn't a cure. But if we're on the cusp of replicating a whole freaking organ of the human body, I'm sure I can eat a bloody donut without dying. Sure, eating certain fatty foods makes it slightly more challenging to manage sugar levels, but if I can regulate them, which I regularly can, I ain't gonna die or end up in a hospital anytime soon. But then, why is there still this notion that junk food is deadly to diabetics? There's probably a few more reasons I haven't gone into, I'm sure. After all, diabetes is a very complex disease. But perhaps one of the largest factors, in my opinion, is this lack of education. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Rather, a lack of education with regards to the knowledge we receive about diabetes. Most of the information we receive is from our parents, who, mind you, grew up in the 20th century. This makes the knowledge old and outdated. There's also a lack of knowledge with respect to diabetic treatment. Yeah, we need to manage sugar levels and make sure they do not skyrocket, and we do that by injecting insulin. But we also need to keep our sugar levels just right. When blood sugar levels go too low for one reason or another, did you know, we actually use sweets as a medication to raise sugar levels. I know, mind blown. Honestly, the bottom line is, diabetes, while it can be deadly, is more controllable now than ever before. Diabetes, where once it was worse than cancer, now it's much less worrisome. I can interact with people and they would have no idea I am diabetic. In contrast, 100 years ago, I would either be a comatose vegetable or dead. It isn't a constant life or death situation anymore. Sure, there are times I won't eat a slice of cake if my sugar levels are off, and there are rough moments for sure, but I can definitely eat a donut. So, the next time you see a diabetic eating a donut, do not ask them if they can eat it or not. Trust me, they can, otherwise they wouldn't.